Yeah, we'll go ahead and get started in just a minute. There's still a few families coming in, so there's plenty of room to sit over here on the left-hand side. There's also some chairs on the floor if you want to sit down there. We'll start in about 1 minute.
Normally I stand the whole time with him, so I feel weird sitting. Like, how lazy am I? So the last presentation was 4 of the elementaries, and this is just
Good evening. Welcome to Pleasant Valley Junior High. Welcome to Riverdale Heights and Pleasant View tonight. My name is Mike Deacon. I'm the principal here at Pleasant Valley Junior High. And tonight, we're hoping by the end of this presentation, you will have a little bit better understanding of this transition from elementary to junior high, understand some of the big changes that will be coming up, and hopefully we can answer your questions and maybe alleviate some fears and anxiety that some of you might have, and also talk about a lot of the exciting things that are yet to come as your student transitions from elementary to junior high. So once again, my name is Mike Deacon, I'm the principal. This is my 4th year as principal here at the junior high. Before that, I was at the high school as an associate principal for 10 years, my 14th year here in the district. I also have 2 daughters who go here. My youngest is actually an 8th grader transitioning out of junior high, and my oldest is a sophomore in high school. So I've been through this from elementary all the way through, so I know what to expect in the transition. And this is often the most difficult transition for a variety of reasons, especially for parents. But this is a difficult transition as we go through because it is a big shift from elementary, where you've been in the same building and know some of the same staff for the last 7 years, to a brand new building. And it's also an exciting time because it's the first time all the elementaries come together as one. First time your class can actually be called a class of Pleasant Valley Spartans. So it's an exciting time as well. So I'm going to do some quick introductions of some faces and some names you're going to get to know very well over the next 2 years. So furthest to my right, to your left, Mrs. Tia Hicks. She's our 7th grade Dean of Students. So you'll get to know her very well over the next 2 years. Next to her, Ms. Patty Reeser. She is a half-time school counselor at Forest Grove Elementary and the junior high, so she rotates between those 2 buildings. And then our final introduction, one of our school counselors, Ms. Jenny Wilson, is one of our professional school counselors as well. So those are some important faces. Dean of Students and also our athletic director. So he is a face you're going to get to know as well. We do have 3 administrators here in the building, so depending on what building you're coming from, both Pleasant View and Riverdale Heights have 2 administrators with the Dean of Students and principal, so it's very similar in terms of that. The other counselor that was not here tonight, Mr. Phil Kenny, is one of our school counselors as well. We have 2.5 counselors. Hopefully, crossing your fingers, we'll have 3 full-time counselors here next year. As we continue to grow, we want to make sure that we are providing the services necessary for our students as well. So, as I said before, tonight our goal is to really get you a little bit better acclimated with what to expect here at the junior high. Have a great night. And to hopefully answer some questions. So I'm going to save some time at the end for questions because hopefully a lot of your answers will come through the next half an hour or so of our information. So it's important to start first of all. With my teacher voice here. Yes, all right. I'll just restart it for now. But just a quick check. How many of you, is this your first student coming into the junior high? Ooh. All right. So what I will say is that over the next 2 years, that time's going to go by quick. Just think about how quick it was when your students were just starting kindergarten. And that's been 6, 7 years ago. The next 2 years are going to fly by very quick. All right, so on the flip side of that, how many of you, is this your last kid coming through the junior high? You see how excited she is? Woo! Well, there definitely comes some perks of that. We'll get to that in a little bit, but you know the many hours and the time you're driving out here, because for those of you that maybe aren't aware, we're kind of out here some. So depending on where you live, it could be a 15-minute drive, 20-minute drive here. So remember that when your kids say, Mom, Dad, I forgot something, it takes a while to come out here. So you do learn to appreciate that as you go. But no kidding aside, whether this is your first child coming through, your last child coming through, hopefully you'll learn something new through tonight and get a better idea of what to expect coming in here at the junior high. So I want to start off first off with our mission and vision here at the junior high, because it's important to understand how we make decisions and what our focus is. So as you look at our mission, our goal is to create a challenging academic environment, empowering students with essential life skills and emotional health. So we want a variety of things to be happening and surrounding. Not only is it important for your students to be challenged to the best of their ability academically, but we're really trying to set them up with those essential life skills: teamwork, communication, listening, problem solving, work ethic, motivation to do my best. All those life skills that we know what it takes to be successful outside of school, we're starting to really embed those and practice those life skills on a daily basis as well. But then also supporting them with their emotional health and their needs. And Mrs. Wilson will go into that as well, not only from our counseling department, but also from our teacher standpoint. We take a lot of pride in our staff really building relationships with our kids and getting to know them on a personal level. Even though our teachers have upwards of 150 kids coming in and out our doors every day, we take a strong pride in our teachers building those relationships with our kids from day one. And then our vision is making potential a reality in all things for all kids. And we'll get into more of what that looks like in the programs that we offer and the classes that we offer for your students. So, some of the things that are the most important information that you need to know and students want to know on a daily basis is what can I expect when I come here to junior high, and then we'll go also into how that differs from your elementary year. So one of the big differences and one of the first things you'll notice is that our school day is comprised of 8 periods. Each period is approximately 45 minutes long, and you will be taking a variety of classes with a variety of teachers. The other big change, as you look at there, that bright and early start time of 7:34 a.m. The bell is ringing, classes start, we're ready to rock and roll at 7:34. So how many of you sixth graders right now are still in bed at 7:34 a.m.? All right, so that's going to be something that you need to start working towards as we progress towards summer of waking up a little bit earlier. But the advantage of starting early is that we end early. We are done at 2:25. If you ride the bus and leave, oftentimes you're back in your house before 3 o'clock, which gives you plenty of time to do your homework and your chores and all the other stuff that your parents have left for you. Another big question we always have is, what lunch am I going to eat? Because right now, you're eating lunch with your grade level, and all sixth graders are eating together. Well, that's not necessarily the case once you get to junior high. But we're very conscious of that and understand lunch is a very important social time period. It can be a very anxious time period for kids as they're looking. And on the other side of the gym, we have our cafeteria. It's not all set up yet, but we can hold approximately 275 to 285 kids in each lunch. So if you are an A lunch, that is a lunch comprised of all seventh graders. That means the entire lunch will be there. It's all seventh graders, and you have the ability to choose where you want to sit, at least for the first week, and then you're stationed there for at least the first quarter. So you have a lot of freedom and flexibility to sit with new people, get to know a lot of people as you're transitioning here. And then some of you might have B lunch, which is about half of seventh graders, half eighth graders. But you will not know which lunch you have until schedules released on Monday, August 15th, so you don't need to worry about that quite yet. But we take a lot of time up front to go through lunch expectations, get kids more acclimated. One piece of advice, I forgot to mention this for the first group as well, but between breakfast and lunch and afternoon snack, and if they have a study hall and get snack, be conscious of what your students are purchasing, because it can rack it up pretty quick. We're fortunate right now with school breakfasts and school lunches still being free. I don't know how long that is going to continue, but with all of the extras and the a la carte items, you can rack up a pretty hefty food bill before you know it. So that's something we go through with kids and say, here's what's included in the lunch, here's the things that are extra cost. But most kids don't quite understand that, and they just grab what they want, and you're paying for that. So that's something to be conscious of as we approach there as well. It's a big change. All right, lockers. They're going to get their own lockers. We'll go through that and explain time for them to go there, but it's a nice big locker. Some of you are used to using a combination lock from elementary and PE. If you haven't used the combination lock, just practice it. The padlocks that you have, just practice those so you can get a little bit more acclimated. And I'll talk about the open times for you to practice your lockers in a little bit later. Okay, some of the big changes. So aside from the early start time, one of the biggest changes you have is the number of teachers you're going to be interacting with on a daily basis. Right now as a sixth grader, you have your one primary teacher, and then you mix in there maybe a band teacher or your music teacher, your art teacher, your science teacher. You might have a couple teachers sprinkled throughout the day, but on any given day, you might see 2 or 3 teachers. Here at the junior high, you're going to see a minimum of 7 teachers. And depending on the classes you're in, you could be upwards of 12, 13 teachers you're interacting with on a daily basis. There's some really big advantages to that, and then there's some challenges to that. The advantages, and one of the things that we often hear that students are most excited with as they transition from elementary to junior high, is that ability to change classes, change teachers, a change of scenery every 45 minutes. So that is a pretty cool thing that our students have the opportunity to do every 45 minutes. They have different kids in their classes, different teachers. Just a constant change is oftentimes very positive for kids as they transition from elementary to junior high. The challenge with that is now that's that many more names you need to keep straight, that many more people you need to communicate with, and we'll talk a little bit about those logistics a little bit. The other piece, the letter grades for all classes. You're used to coming from the elementary world where things have been standards-based grading for at least the last year, if not prior to that, last 2 years. What you're going to find is we have a lot of components of standards-based learning, standards reference grades, but we are not fully a standards-based grading school. The junior high and high school are not at that point yet with standards-based grading, but you'll find certain departments like PE and math and science Even social studies have a lot of standards reference grade or standards-based learning components to that. So you're going to see we're a good segue and transition from the standards-based elementary. As you progress, you're going to see components of that as well. The other one that I'm really excited about showcasing this is that this transition to junior high gives your student multiple opportunities to be involved in things here at junior high. So that could be in academics, that could be music, that could be a sport, it could be a club, it could be a after-school activity that they're involved in. There are so many opportunities for your kids to be involved, and that's what we strongly encourage you to do, is get involved in as many things as you can, try new things, go out for a new sport, try a new club, because it's a great opportunity to meet people with similar passions and interests, and it just opens up your friend network and social network to get involved in as many things as possible. And all the research says the more connected kids are to school, the more connected they are to activities, the more successful they are in their academic and post-secondary world. And then lastly, this will be a big one that we start to emphasize, is that increased self-advocacy and responsibility. Okay, so here's a couple important things I need to make sure I cover, and they don't get lost here in this transition. But with every important transition, there are certain things that need to be accomplished or completed in this transition. So one of those most important things you have to check off your list as you transition from 6th to 7th grade is making sure that your student is updating their meningococcal vaccination. This is a state of Iowa Department of Health requirement. It's not a Pleasant Valley requirement, it's an Iowa Department of Health requirement that you have updated shots for your meningitis, your meningococcal vaccine, and the Tdap. So this is one where when you are scheduling your updated physical or a doctor's appointment before you start 7th grade, just remind your physician, hey, my student is going to 7th grade, what vaccinations or shots do they need to get, and then that'll be completed at that point. So that's just a reminder, there's no grace period. That means you cannot start on day one if you don't have the vaccination. We'll make sure we send out plenty of reminders for you up between there, but that's one of those things that is checked off and we just have to make sure is accomplished before the start of school on Tuesday, August 23rd. Another piece, so just a quick show of hands, how many students here are involved in a sport right now? Awesome, so a lot of people, maybe you're out for volleyball or softball or soccer or baseball or flag football or something else. And right now you have the ability to participate in whatever sport you want. And really the only requirements is that your parents pay you a little bit of money and drive you to and from practices. But starting when you get to 7th grade, we now fall under the jurisdiction and the guidelines of the Iowa High School Athletic Association and the Iowa Girls High School Athletic Union. And because of that, we have to follow certain rules and expectations to be under those sanctioned sports. And one of those is that in order to participate in those sports, you need to have an updated annual physical every single year completed by a physician. And that physical is good for 13 months, because all of you know how great insurance works. You can't get it a day sooner, but it's valid for 13 months. But one of the things that we've implemented over the last 2 years here at the junior high is the ability for families to upload that into an online program called Family ID. Well, starting next year, from a 7-12 standpoint, we're going to be transitioning over to a similar platform called Varsity Bound. And that gives you as a family the opportunity to upload your physical, upload your signed parent consent form for concussions, and that gives your son or daughter the ability to participate in sports after school. And once again, a lot more information will be coming about that in the spring, later this spring and summer. But before your student can participate in any sports here at the junior high, they need to make sure they fulfill that requirement as they transition. Another big transition is medications. Many of you probably drop off your kids at school. You're in close proximity to your elementary school. It's really easy for you just to drop things off because you live within some of you walking distance of your elementary. Well, now When junior high comes, 80 to 85% of our kids bus here every single day. So you are no longer dropping them off. Even though we do have quite a few families who drop off still, the vast majority of our kids take the bus here to school. So what we ask is if your student takes medication here at school, you as a parent, please drop that off yourself. Don't send it with your kids to drop off because we don't want to get lost in the bus. We don't want to get misplaced with prescription drugs there. Drop it off in the main office. They'll take it to the nurse directly. Don't send that medication with your kids here to school. All right, the other piece that's a pretty cool opportunity for kids is as you transition to 7th grade, you are now issued a district-issued Chromebook for you to use. And so we ask, and you've seen the Spider-Man movies, you've heard the phrase, with great power comes great responsibility. That applies here with the Chromebooks because we're giving you a lot of power. We're empowering you to use this technology to enhance your education, not your entertainment, but your education. But with great power comes great responsibility. We'll go through that a lot with the expectations, but you're expected to bring it to school every day, fully charged, making sure you're taking care of it, and you're not throwing it in your backpack and throwing it around and dropping it on the floor and damaging it. So that's a pretty cool opportunity for you to have that technology available for you to enhance your education, but you need to make sure you're taking care of that as well. And then cell phones, one of the common questions we get asked is, do students need cell phones here at the junior high? The easy answer to that is not really, but at the same time, if your kid is getting on the bus at 6:42 and they're coming home after sport and not getting home until 5:45, I completely understand why they may need that to communicate with you. But here's just a general rule of thumb when it comes to cell phones here at the junior high. So the minute I step into a classroom, the expectation is that phone's put away. It's put in a cell phone cubby, it's left in your locker. When you step foot into a classroom, you do not need your cell phone. When you are in passing period or you're at lunch, you can check your phone. We actually just had conversations with all of our junior high kids today regarding cell phone expectations. And if they're not able to abide by those cell phone expectations, then we start to restrict them even more. So a lot of it depends on, once again, with some empowerment comes some responsibility. So that's something that we continue to monitor that. But basically, during their class, they don't need their cell phones. They've got their Chromebook. We're giving them all the technology they need, so they really don't need their phones, their AirPods, their headphones for anything during the academic day. But I can understand if you want them to have that to and from school, they can keep it in their locker. If you need to get a hold of us, call 332-0200. We'll go get them out of class. We can contact them. You don't need to be texting them all the time in class as well. All right. So I'm going to hand it over to Ms. Wilson, who's going to talk about the role of a school counselor, how it looks different than the elementary, and then she'll also introduce some of the courses that your son or daughter may be taking next year.
Hello everybody, I am Mrs. Wilson. I am one of 3 school counselors here at the junior high and who've officially made it halfway through, so congratulations to this presentation. So school counselor. So when you guys think of us, I want you to think of like the supporters and the helpers for your student and for your family. So we focus on 3 large domains here at the junior high, the first being academic, the second social emotional, and third being college and career. So when we talk about academics, we are the schedule creators of your children. So anytime you have questions about your schedule, what's going on with some of their classes in that way, please contact us. We are kind of the lead when you guys are coming into the junior high, 7th to 8th transition, as well as your transition from 8th into 9th grade. Some things that we also do to help, if your kiddos are struggling with organization, goal setting, just daily routines, whether that's before school or after school, please reach out to us. Sometimes you guys catch if they're struggling before we do, so we want to be in communication with you. Social emotional. So this is kind of that first stepping stone to peers becoming the world of your child. So with that being said, we deal with a lot of peer issues, some anxiety, grief, conflict resolution and mediation with students. We also do a lot of mental health work with kiddos. Sometimes that also comes with recommendations for further mental health support. So we have a fantastic school-based therapist here at the junior high. We also have resources outside of the building. Another area with college and career, we use a program called Zello, which is an online platform where you'll do interest inventories and kind of explore what are some things that you might be interested in pursuing after high school. We do high school course planning. We also do field trips, so these will be available throughout the year, 7th and 8th grade for your students. So some of the areas and additional support services that we have in our building are academic study hall, so that would be a student working with a teacher. Mrs. Abby Clower is her name, and she works with students who are enrolled in study hall but just need a little bit of extra support. So whether that's prioritization, getting organized, she supports our students who are in study hall. We have a class called After School Advisory. Each of your students will be assigned an advisor, and Mr. Pekin will talk a little bit about that later on as well. That is a fantastic opportunity for students to stay after school that may need some extra time to work with a teacher, do some reteaching, especially if they've been absent, sick, out. It's 35 minutes after school almost every single day, so that's an awesome opportunity. Again, we have a school-based therapist. Her name is Christy Strobey. She is independently housed in our counseling office. She's from Bethany. She works specifically with kids with their mental health needs. And then we also have a class called Flex. So we may recommend that if you really see that your student is struggling with organization, just building those good study habits and foundational skills. All right, so this is the exciting stuff. What are you going to be taking when you come here as a 7th grader? So like Mr. Pekin said, all of your classes are going to be 45 minutes long. So we have 8 periods a day here at the junior high, but you are only going to have 7 classes. And that's because language arts, my friends, is 2 periods in a row. So all of your classes will be 45 minutes, except for language arts, will be 90 minutes. You're also going to take social studies, science, math, and then all of our students take PE, physical education, Monday, Wednesday, Friday each week. And in that same period, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, all of our 7th graders take health class. So you're also going to get to take some extra electives in there. So sometimes your students might be recommended for additional support classes for their academics. So classes like Reading to Succeed, Flex that I just talked about, and skills enrichment. The big electives that we see many of our students take are orientation. Almost all of our 7th graders are going to take a series of courses in orientation. So that means every 9 weeks or once a quarter, they are going to take one of the 4 classes. So those comprise of arts, world language, and in world language they're going to be doing a little bit of French and Spanish. FACT stands for Family and Consumer Science, and then design and modeling. So every student that takes orientation will take all 4 of those courses. And then if you have a kiddo who is in music, we also offer band Monday, Wednesday, Friday for 7th graders, chorus, orchestra, and then some of our students will have study halls potentially every day, or they might have alternating those musics. Now I know for many of you, you're going to start having your teacher conferences or parent-teacher conferences tomorrow and into the first week of March. They are going to go over much more extensively with you your options for selecting your electives, as these are obviously going to be on an individual basis. So if you have questions after you have your parent-teacher conference, please do not hesitate to reach out to us to ask more specific questions about your student. But here are some of the possible combinations that you could have if you're taking a variety of music. Before Mr. Pekin jumps in, I'm going to say one last thing. So your students are actually going to get the opportunity to hang out with this amazing school counselors a couple more times before the end of the year. So we are super excited to have you guys here. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. We are here to support you and answer any questions, as we know this is a big transition for you guys. So I'm going to hand it back over to Mr. Pekin. Thank you.
Another thing I forgot to mention in our first presentation, but when you start to get your sheet that has the classes that you're recommended for, what you're going to find is that at this time, everybody is just recommended for Math 7. And that's because we want to make sure we're getting the most updated information. So when your students take the ISASC test, end of March, early April, we'll look at that final determination, and then from there, make recommendations on whether they'll be in Math 7, pre-algebra, algebra, whatever that may be. So we'll let your 6th grade teachers know probably by mid-April where that course placement is for math. And another question we often get is, well, they're right on the bubble, can they just be bumped up to pre-algebra? The answer to that is maybe. So we do have a very thorough process at the beginning of the year. If you're in recommended for Math 7, but you feel that your son or daughter should be in pre-algebra, the very first couple days of school, our math teachers all take, and this every single kid in the junior high takes a math growth assessment. And so it looks at the end of the year goals and standards, and if they're able to accomplish that in a certain standard, then they are recommended to bump up. So it really shows that they've got those prerequisite skills to be successful in that next level. So if your son or daughter is not recommended for whatever class in math that you feel, don't worry, there's opportunities for them to show their skills later on. So that's just something we started last year. We're going to continue. It really worked out very well this fall in terms, I think this year we had the least amount of movement of students because they were actively placed in the community. And it's really important in math to get them started in that foundational level early because math is just compounding and builds off itself. And it's oftentimes not in the junior high and not even your first couple years of the high school, but it's really your junior and senior year. If you start out and accelerate too quickly, you're going to hit a roadblock pretty darn quick. And Mr. Rice, who's one of the high school counselors up there, shaking his head because we do find that if you are misplaced inaccurately as a 7th and 8th grader, it's going to come back to bite you as a sophomore and junior. So we do take a lot of time, and we want to make sure that we're offering the best recommendations for your kids with that. So that's a little bit about math there. So as we transition here, one of the goals, and I talked about this earlier, is really starting to create that sense of self-advocacy for kids. And so on the left-hand side, you see some of the important pieces that we want students to be working on. And one of the most critical components is students creating a routine. It's very important for kids to find out what's working for them, what's not working for them. Developing a time and a location for study to make sure that they are getting their homework done at a certain time because many kids are very busy. You're waking up early in the morning, getting on the bus at 6:45, you're here till 5 o'clock for sports or clubs or activities, you're off to then go to other dance or piano or soccer or other things. You have busy days. So you need to know when you study best, develop the routine to make sure you're getting everything done, and that starts from day one. You can't wait until it's too late and realize, oh shoot, this isn't working, and I'm not getting my homework done, and it's 10 o'clock at night, and I've got to set my alarm for 6 o'clock in the morning. You just have to work through some of those routines to find out what's working and what's not. Finding an organization system that works for you as a student. Because maybe everything you've done up to this point has worked, but then all of a sudden you get to junior high and realize, I need to now balance going to and from classes, I need to carry different folders or binders, I need to have multiple Google Classrooms that I'm trying to keep organized, and it is a big transition for kids. So finding the organization system that works for you, we've got a lot of great recommendations from teachers, some good systems that we have in place. But one of the things that oftentimes we see some butting heads is students trying to find their own organization system that works for them, and it contradicts parents what your organizational system is. So sometimes you need to let go and let them make some of their own mistakes, know when to chime in and say, this system works better, or just say, you can find an opportunity for you to figure out what's working and what's not working for you. And that's one of the beauties of junior high, is you have the opportunity to try a lot of new things, trial some things, find out what's working, what's not. And there's a lot of great self-independent skills that we're trying to infuse in kids. And the last thing is students just making sure you're keeping tabs on what's due and what's not due, when it's due. Google Classroom is great because it'll send reminders and doing that, but we are really strongly encouraging kids to become that self-advocate, taking charge of their own education. So what that may look like is if there is a student who's having some problems in a class or has questions or maybe has missed an assignment or two, we encourage the first line of communication, student to teacher. Keeping that line of communication open. Encourage your student, go talk to your teacher. Open up those lines of communication. Don't immediately bypass that important step by going and emailing or calling the teacher on behalf of your kid. Really empower them to ask those questions. And there will be times where you will need to intervene, but really encourage your kids from the start to be that self-advocate and take control of their own education. On the right-hand side, parents, some of the things that you're going to find as you transition here to junior high. Assisting them in developing the organizational skills, asking questions. You know, you studied for that test, you got an 85%. Look back, what went well, what would you do differently next time? And maybe they can, through some self-analysis or reflection, find out what worked and what didn't. But letting them explore some of that rather than say, this is what needs to be done, and this is how it needs to be done, your student might start to not listen to you a little bit more. Once again, helping them develop independence. Meet with your student weekly to review what's coming up, assignments. I encourage you to kind of lay out, all right, what do you have this week? Do you have any upcoming tests this week? Let's look at your night schedule and figure out when you're going to be gone. So don't always wait till the night before to study. If you know there's a test came out on Friday, you can start studying on Monday. That's okay. So laying that out and really start working on, hey, you've got a game on Thursday night and you've got religious ed on Wednesday night. Why don't we start studying Tuesday night? You already know what's going to be on the test. So developing some of those patterns and habits and routines as well. And then weekly assignments. If your son or daughter does have a missing assignment, every Thursday there'll be a blast that's sent out. Hey, so-and-so is missing this assignment. Once again, if you get one of those, don't panic. Don't immediately email or call the teacher. Talk to your student. Hey, did you hand in that assignment? No, it's right here. All right, tomorrow morning when you get to school, drop that off to your teacher or drop it off there. So that's one of the things that you just really try to encourage them to be in charge of their own education. But if you do have questions, talk to the counselors, talk to the teachers, email them. If there's something that you feel is a little bit more of an emergency or immediate, contact the dean of students or that, but don't automatically bypass all those important steps because the first question is, if you call me about a class, my first question to you, have you spoke with the teacher? Or more importantly, have you talked to your son or daughter about it? So make sure that those pieces are there and you follow those steps. All right, so that's the school day. So the bell rings at 2:25, kids run out of school, get on one of our 23 buses. But that's only a portion of the school because we have a large percentage of the school that stays here in the building. So what do from 2:25 onwards? Mrs. Wilson talked about that after-school advisor from 2:30 till 3:10. Your student on their schedule will be assigned a teacher. Every day when the bell rings at 2:30, they're going to be in that after-school advisor. That time is dedicated for them to quietly and independently work on homework. Sometimes they have homework, sometimes they don't. They still are expected to have things to work on, book to read, quiet things to keep them busy. Sometimes kids just have a busy, hectic schedule. They just need to decompress, relax for 10 or 15 minutes. That's okay, as long as it's not interfering with their ability to get their work done as well. So we have a place for them at 3:10, the bell rings. We have an afternoon snack bar. They can bring snacks from home because practices start about 3:20 to 3:25, or after school clubs start about 3:20 and 3:25. Those will run till approximately 5 o'clock. And we have different seasons of sports. I'll go through that here in a little bit. We have a lot of clubs and activities that go on during that time period. But the most important thing as a parent you need to know, you don't necessarily need to come out here at 5 o'clock to pick them up, because there's another bus that will take them home. So we go from 23 buses that leave at 2:25. We have 7 activity buses that will drive around and drop kids off. So it may take a little bit longer, but your kid will eventually get home. So don't worry. We hope. All right. So some of the activities, I talked about the Iowa High School Athletic Association, the Iowa Girls Athletic Union, the sanctioned sports that we have here at the junior high. During the fall season, season 1, that starts the first day of school and runs till approximately mid-October. That would be football, cross country, volleyball, and cheerleading. Once again, if you're interested in participating in any of those activities, you need to have a valid physical assigned concussion form by the start of school. Season 2, which will run from mid-October to early December, would be girls basketball and wrestling and cheerleading. Season 3, which happens right after winter break, which is what we're just finishing up right now, would be boys basketball, swimming, and cheerleading. And then after spring break, we start season 4, which is track and field. So once your physical is uploaded, if you're not involved in a sport until season 4, you're fine. You can participate in any of those, but you need to have that valid physical signed concussion form completed before you participate in that. More information will come on that this spring as we transition to varsity bound. So look at the e-news. We'll send those out, and a lot of communication this spring once that is available for families to begin accessing that. All right, so for you non-athletes, or maybe somebody who's looking to get involved in something besides sports or academics, we've got a variety of clubs and opportunities for kids to get involved in. So these are just some of our clubs that are active or have been active over the last 4 years. Of course, during the world of COVID over the last couple of years, some of those have been limited, but this year we've been able to really bring back a lot of these opportunities. And the beauty of all of these after-school activities and clubs, are the vast majority of them are student-created and student-led. So if you have a passion or an interest in some sort of club or activity, here's the process you would need to go about is starting your own club. Get a group of friends that have the same interest or passion as you. Find a staff member who's going to be able to say, yes, I will stay with you from this time on this date. You're going to sign a form that says, here's the club we want to start. Here's the frequency we'd like to meet. Here's what we'd like to accomplish. I sign off that form. You've now started a new club. So, of course, it's got to be, there's some limitations to that, but we strongly encourage kids, if they're passionate about something, we want them to really take part in that. Go back to that, one of my earlier statements, we want kids to be involved in as many things as they can, to get connected, to branch out, meet new friends, and this is an excellent opportunity for kids to do that outside of the school day. So those are just some of the clubs, but once again, I'll be excited to see what the new examples of clubs that they're really coming up with. And some of the things we definitely need to take into consideration. Number 1, is it school appropriate? Number 2, what's the cost of this club? And number 3, making sure that it is open and accessible for students who are interested in that club. So those are some of the things that we take into consideration. All right. Communication. How are you going to stay up to date with all the things going on here at the junior high? E-News is a great opportunity, and right now you can actually go in your contacts on E-News, click a button, subscribe for the junior high. You can start to get updates on what the junior high is. But anything from here on out this spring that is important in the transition from 6th to 7th grade, I communicate with Ms. Beth Marsoon as our communications director. She adds that into all of the elementary E-News as well. So any important things that you need to know, we're including in those elementary E-News for the remainder of the year. Daily announcements. We communicate a lot with kids here in the building. Between daily announcements, when clubs are going to be meeting, practices and changes there. And sometimes that communication doesn't always make it home to you as the family. So we got your back when your kids aren't communicating with you. If you pull up your Infinite Campus parent portal, it shows here's all the clubs that are going on for the day. Here's the sports or the games that are scheduled for the day. Important changes that might occur, we'll send an important e-news or campus messenger where we'll contact you. So we're doing a lot of good things to try to bridge that lack of communication gap that sometimes kids have with families. And then when all else fails, you can feel free to email or pick up the old phone and call as well. So, all right, so we're currently in this first one, February, where we are talking about this transition. Your students will be selecting their courses over the next week or so during their parent-teacher conferences. Fast forward to April, we're going to have 7th grade kids. So former Pleasant View students, former Riverdale Heights students will be going back to their elementary to answer your questions as kids, talk about what that transition is, what they wish they would have known, what they're really excited about. That will occur at some point in April. Then in May, all of your schools will be coming here to do more of a tour of the building. We'll get to know them a little bit more. They'll be all introduced. They'll see some things going on here in the building to hopefully give them a little bit better understanding of how the daily schedule works. That will be coming up in May. All right, last but not least, as we start to move closer to the start of the school year, our goal is twofold once that first day of school starts. The first day of school is Tuesday, August 23rd. Our goal is we want students to be comfortable and confident in 2 things. Do I know where my classes are? And can I open my locker? If you can accomplish those 2 things, the first day of school is a little bit easier to navigate. So we give you plenty of opportunities for students to come in, practice walking your schedule, to open your locker, to find out where your friends are at, to meet up and find out who's in your classes, and all those important things for 7th graders as they're starting off the year. So we'll communicate this also as it gets closer, but I just want to put this on your radar that we don't have students start from scratch on day 1. We give them plenty of opportunities to get acclimated in the building in May and throughout August as well. So we'll send those out where we give people a lot of opportunity to come. And once again, we'll be excited on the first day of school, August 23rd, to welcome you as 7th graders. All right, I've been throwing a lot of information out at you over the last 35 minutes or so, maybe longer. Yeah, a little bit longer. So now I'm opening up for you. What questions do you have? Things that maybe I didn't address or things that you're still wondering about in this transition from 6th to 7th grade? All right, start with you. Yes, so if they have Chromebooks currently as 6th graders, I believe those are going to be staying at the elementary school, and they will be issued new Chromebooks. I will wait for further direction from Kevin Penkamp, who's the Director of Technology, and we'll see with that transition.
Okay, and one more question. The options for the electives, it used to be, are they able to do band, orchestra, choir, and after study hall?
Yeah.
Study hall?
Yeah, so that's like more individual, but yeah, they can take all 3 musics, but they won't have orientation or study hall.
They take all the music, but they don't have to study hall, correct?
They would not.
They would not have, they would not do it.
With it shows that they have it, it shows the study hall as like the part of it. And the application, it makes it look like study hall is after application hall.
Okay. Yeah, and that's a great, I would strongly encourage you, if at all possible, sign up for classes. You don't need a study hall necessarily. So if you're like, oh, should I go out for choir again, or should I do it? Because it's really fun. It gives you an opportunity to continue and participate in that in a really relatively less stressful environment. We encourage you to take as many classes as you can. All right, up there, question. All right, so the orientation languages, so you do essentially 1 week of an introduction to world cultures, and then 4 weeks of French, 4 weeks of Spanish. All right, other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Can you clarify with the after-school advisory, is that something that kids choose, like, okay, I have this club this day, so I'm going to go to the after-school advisory, or is it like you have assigned, it's like on your schedule for the season or for the year or what?
Yes, that's a good question regarding after-school advisor. A lot of it depends on what you're staying for. So if you're staying for a club that meets only once a week, you would only go to your advisor or be required to go to your advisor when you're staying. And if you're leaving at 2:25, you don't have to stay at your after-school advisor. That's after the school day. But if you're staying for a sport that meets every single day, then every single day you would stay and go to your after-school advisor from 2:30 till 3:10.
Follow-up question with that. Are they able to stay if they feel like they can get their homework done in a more quiet location instead of younger siblings running around and then get picked up by the parents?
Yes. So they can get picked up at 3:10, but what we don't have is from 3:10 till 5 o'clock, they can't just stay to just hang out and wait for the 5 o'clock bus. So if they are staying and you're going to pick them up at 3:15, 3:30, that is perfectly fine. Yes. And we do have that a lot where maybe on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm going to stay and get some extra math help or work with my ELA teacher or something like that. That happens very frequently.
Thank you.
All right. Question right there in the gray. All right.
You're gonna shout way loud.
Yeah, you use your powerful voice here. That's a great question. So the question is, why does the school start at 7:34 and not 7:30 or 7:35? Just to keep you on your toes. That is, you know what, that is $1 million question because I asked that as well. Why do we start at 7:34? And the answer that it always comes down to is it comes down to buses. So, yeah, ultimately. All right, in the blue up there, question. When are tryouts for sports? Is that what your question? There are no tryouts for sports. If you're interested in going out for a sport, you come to practices. We have a no-cut policy in all athletics. So some of the places that you might see limitations, some clubs, because they have to prepare material, so like if a food prep club or an art club, they may only get supplies for the first 20 people because they cost money. Some of the other things that might have auditions or comes maybe for the musical or drama where there's only so many roles, but like currently out for junior high boys basketball, our 7th grade has approximately 80 kids out for 7th grade boys basketball, and our 8th grade has about 65, and so there's a lot of kids who participate. We have in track we'll have probably 200 to 250 kids out for track and field, both boys and girls. So huge numbers, great opportunity to participate, but there are a lot of numbers. All right, other questions? Yes, ma'am.
What's the homework situation?
Ooh, what's the homework situation? What's the damage? I would say it depends. It depends on how organized you are. It depends on how much you utilize the time in the school day. So if you procrastinate, you're going to have more homework at home. If you're on the ball and start to get your work done when you have time in class to start it, and you use your time wisely during after-school advisor, you're going to get the vast majority of your homework done. And you're going to find that that's the case is how much time you prioritize, you're going to be able to get that done in a more timely fashion.
And we will talk lots about that in the panel visits and when you come to visit us in May.
All right, let's go over here. Question there, and then we'll come to right in front. Every day. Yep, so if you're practicing for sports, they occur every single day. The exception to that, for instance, right now, with our early dismissals on Fridays or anytime we have an early dismissal, we would not have any after-school clubs or activities or practices those nights. All right.
So for the physical, it has to be downloaded to that app?
Yes, if your physical will need to be uploaded through the Varsity Bound app, yes.
The doctor should have the form.
Yes, and we actually have those forms on our school website. You can go on there, it's just a generic physical form that the physician needs to fill out.
And then for the homework, is it on Infinite Campus, like high schoolers, when they have to turn it in on that app, or is it actual homework that they just turn in?
So the question is, how is the homework turned in? Some of it's turned in through Google Classroom. Some of it's turned in traditional paper, pencil. It really depends on the class and depends on what the activity is, but you'll see a combination of both. Yep. All right, let's do 2 more questions. I feel like I've neglected this side, so we'll go over here. You have a question, sir?
Do you have meningitis and Tdap vaccine if they had it when they were younger? Is that okay, or does that have to be the year before they start?
They need to have that in their health records that shows they have had that vaccination. Yes. Yep. All right, one more question, and then if you have other questions, I will be around to answer any questions you may have. Yes, Yes, ma'am.
Just going off of what she was talking about, not a question, just making it known there's not a bus between the end of the school day and the activity bus. So if they stay for advisor, they have to get picked up if they don't have an activity to go to after advisor. Because there's not a bus that runs after the academic advisory period.
That would be correct. All right. So I know there's several questions. A lot of the student questions are about clubs and activities. I'll stick around, answer as many questions you have. But first off, thank you for coming out tonight in the cold weather.